waking up here wrapped in steady arms around me, pockets full of blood. After
I'd like to tell you about one of my favorite places in this world. And you'll have to settle for my recollection because it would be quite impossible for you to go there. I am talking about the beach town of Pensacola, Florida in 1998. I mean, you could visit Pensacola today, but the things I'm speaking about happened 20 years ago. A lot changes in 20 years. I'm not so naive to think that it is the same place I left all those years ago. I want to speak to you of a moment in time in a special place. See, look, when I was a kid, my family was very poor. We lived in a trailer and struggled to make ends meet. One of the things my mother was able to achieve was finding a country lot to park our trailer on, though, and rent at a reasonable price off an old man who had a kind heart. It was really an anomaly. Today, that place is a gas station. Anyways, my mom felt like it would be important for us to not grow up in the city, so we didn't. Now, it was a good plan, and I'm really proud that my mom was able to pull that off. But one side effect was that it put us in a school with a lot of kids that came from families that were far better off than ours financially. I remember every spring break, the kids would talk about their family vacations to various parts of Florida and Myrtle Beach. Of course, my family had no money to take extravagant vacations. I knew I would be going nowhere over spring break. But something built in my mind in those days. The idea, this perception that Florida must be awesome. And I decided way back then that one day I would go to Florida and see what all the hype was about. Flash forward several years later, and I'm a 19-year-old kid deciding to join the Navy. After spending the first part of my military career with the Marines as a corpsman, I finally got the chance to go to Florida. A small naval hospital right there in Pensacola. I was super excited. As a poor kid from Ohio who had very little, I gotta tell you, I had this crazy preconception that Florida was some kind of awesome place. I flew to Pensacola from Jacksonville, North Carolina. It was dark when I arrived. I got a taxi to take me to the base, and I reported for duty. That same night, I had to see the beach, and I had to get a CD player. I can't explain to you why, other than music was the most important thing in my life at the time, and I felt like arriving in Pensacola, Florida, truly hadn't been consecrated until I stepped foot on that Florida beach for the first time. So when I got to the beach, it was late, and there were very few people there. As I crossed the sidewalk in a patio area and the beach came into view, the first thing I saw was a couple having sex right there on the beach. I kid you not. The second thing I saw was the night sky and the ocean. All my suspicions were confirmed at that moment. Florida, and more specifically Pensacola, might just be the coolest damn town on the planet. Now keep in mind, guys, I was a 22-year-old kid at the time. I was young. Pensacola had two malls in 1998. The Cordova Mall and the University Mall. The latter, I have since found out, no longer exists. There was a place called the Silver Screen close to the University Mall. It showed movies just a tiny bit after they left the other theaters. They had tables in there and chairs where you could eat while you watched the movie. It was something I'd never seen before, and it was really cool. It was at the Silver Screen that I first experienced the Rocky Horror Picture Show the way you were meant to experience it. Now, I frequented these malls often when I was in Pensacola. I would buy CDs like crazy back then. It's funny looking back on it. Nobody buys CDs anymore. They seemed so important to me back then, though. I would visit the music stores in those malls, and I would seek out every hole-in-the-wall excuse for a music store across that whole entire town and beyond, looking for rare gems. The hard-to-find stuff that you could only find venturing into uncharted territory that no one else seemed to know about. I was young, and although I was in the Navy, I was on a shore command. It was the closest I had ever come to actual freedom in my life. You have to remember, up until that point, I went from living at home with my mom and dad to joining the Navy. For me, being in Pensacola at age 22 on a shore command was the equivalent of most guys graduating from high school and moving out on their own for the first time. I started a band. We played shows around town. It was awesome. I went to so many local rock shows. I regularly frequented legendary bars like the Night Owl, Sluggos, the Handlebar, and Seville Quarter. I got to see bands like the Foo Fighters, Tonic, Korn, Limp Bizkit, Smashing Pumpkins, Cheap Trick, Stone Temple Pilots, and many others as they rolled through town. I got to talk with Jimmy Page at the Springfest in 1998 when I was watching K's Choice play on a small stage. Creed had just put out My Own Prison, and they were the big act on the main stage. Jimmy Page was in town for a show he was playing with Robert Plant. I'm not sure if they were even playing at Springfest, but I definitely remember seeing him and saying, "Hey, Jimmy Page, what's up, man?" And him coming over and talking with me and my friend. I'll never forget my favorite pizza place in Pensacola, Hungry Howie's. Me and my Navy buddies must have kept that place in business because it was every day, ordering pizzas and subs and gyros and calzones from Hungry Howie's. If I ever make it back to Pensacola, I want to take my family to Hungry Howie's. I remember growing up and my dad playing all these songs on his guitar. One of the bands he used to play songs by was Steppenwolf. Songs like Magic Carpet Ride and Born to Be Wild. I grew up thinking Steppenwolf was a larger-than-life rock band. Imagine my surprise when one night I was driving around Pensacola and stopped at a local park because I saw a small stage set up. It was one of those trailers that opened up into a portable stage. There must have been about 25 people watching the band play. Lo and behold, it was Steppenwolf. I could not believe it. How was it possible that this legendary band that I grew up listening to on the radio and hearing my dad play their songs on guitar was playing in this park on a Thursday to 25 people at a free show? It was a weird feeling, and for the first time in my life, I realized something. Rock musicians, for the most part, have an expiration date. They don't get to be in the spotlight forever. The world moves on to new things. It was a sad realization for me. I told my dad about it on the phone a few days later. He couldn't believe I got to see them. I couldn't believe it was so anticlimactic. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was learning pretty important lessons about life back then. I could go on and on about the town of Pensacola in 1998. It was where I made the plans to make it in the music business and started saving my money to go to LA after I got out of the Navy. I didn't, though. I met a girl and I moved back to Rhode Island where she was from instead. A dumb move and another lesson I learned the hard way many years later. Some of my best friends I met in Pensacola, people I still talk to even to this day. I left it all out there on the table in Pensacola in 1998. I was truly living a life for me. It was a good time. It was a selfish time. I guess that is what your 20s are all about, figuring out who you are and just focusing on you. I loved Pensacola in 1998. At 41, I can look back on it and realize I am not the same person I was back then. Pensacola is probably not the same place it was back then. I'd love to go back in time and watch it play out again like a movie. I wouldn't want to go back in time and relive it or change it. Every decision I made has led me to the point I am at right now. And it has been an amazing journey up until now. But I wonder, do you have a place in your history like my Pensacola of 1998? If you do, let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear about it. That's all I got for tonight, guys. Thanks so much for tuning into the daily vlog, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.
Never saw it sneaking up here, wrapped its dirty arms around me, pockets full of blood after I